Things are not going well at the Daily Wire. They're losing talent, laying off staff, and their CEO, Jeremy Boring, has resigned. With all the rumors swirling around the company, I think it's a good time to take a look at how they got here and just how bad things may be. Let's start with the beginning. The Daily
Jew-hating Obama administration strikes again. They monitor Congress to target Israel. Jew-hating Obama administration strikes again. God, I love American media. Just the most unhinged group of charlatans on the planet. Famous hater of Israel, notable Jew hater Barack Obama, only gave $38 billion to Israel on his way out. How dare he? Disgusting. Really messed up.
Daily Wire launched back in 2015 from the humble beginnings of being cooked up in Jeremy Boring's pool house. Boring and Ben Shapiro would start the Daily Wire through their LLC, Benke Ventures. The Daily Wire found early success marketing its content on Facebook, where Ben Shapiro in particular gained a large following. The outlet got massive engagement for its articles, often dwarfing news outlets like CNN and HuffPost. However, an investigation by Popular Information detailed how much of this engagement was driven by sock puppet accounts that hid their affiliation with the Daily Wire to help spread their stories. Although it violates Facebook's terms of service to do that, the Daily Wire didn't face any real penalties after they were exposed, aside from being asked to mark accounts with names like American Patriot and America First as being run by their company. The Daily Wire also saw growth in podcasting and on YouTube, in part through their aggressive marketing strategy, which included a large number of paid ads. And over time, they began...
Everything is fake all the time, dude. Everything is fake all the time. It's all moneyed interest coming in, flooding the market with propaganda, with the hopes that they can actually target. Like, it's like view botting, right? Why do people view bot? Because Twitch is, much like every other platform, but especially on Twitch, like it's a very top-heavy platform, right? So when you actually use ViewBots to get to the top of the directory, real audience members come along as well. That's it. It's literally that simple. For the Daily Wire, that was the goal. Everything that they've ever done is completely botted into oblivion. And they were able to manufacture some kind of like a real audience out of this. Until, of course, that audience, until October 7, basically, when that audience was like, oh, wait, you guys love Israel.
And to develop a loyal audience. They later launched a subscription service where they provided members with exclusive material. And for the first few years, things were looking very rosy for the company. By 2022, the Daily Wire seemed to be reaching its peak. They celebrated by renaming their subscription service Daily Wire Plus, and it had gained hundreds of thousands of new subscribers throughout that year. According to Jeremy Boring, revenue figures were projected to be reaching $200 million. That money was used to sign high-profile talent such as Jordan Peterson and Candace Owens. In short, things were looking very good for the company. At some point, things began to take a turn. It's difficult to say exactly where this was, since the Daily Wire is very selective with the metrics it makes public, and there are many different parts of this company to consider. But I want to highlight a few of the reasons I think the Daily Wire is in some trouble right now. I believe the first major catalyst was the company's foray into the world of movies and television. Many of the people at the Daily Wire have, at various times, tried to make it in the world of entertainment. Jeremy Boring had produced and written several shorts, Ben Shapiro was an aspiring screenwriter, Michael Knowles was an actor, and Andrew Klavan has writing credits for a few produced movies. Their levels of success varied.
I did call this at the time, yes. Yes, I did. And if you remember, chatters, when they launched their scripted division, I said this was destined for failure. And it's not because I saw the future. I simply looked at the past. The example I used, yep, this chatter is correct. You guys are so good at recall. The example I used was NRA TV. The NRA is one of the most powerful lobbying arms in the United States of America. And yet, the NRA fell apart. Why did the NRA fall apart? Not because they were mismanaging funds, even though that took place as well. But the reason why the NRA fell apart was because of their ambitions of entering the marketplace of content creation. The NRA took a lot of risk to create a steady flow of propaganda that directly came from the NRA, cutting out the middleman. It created the careers of Dan Bongino and numerous other Kalayan Noor, numerous other people. Having said that, however, it caused the collapse of this massive organization because content creation is an expensive endeavor, especially when the people doing it are not, organically charismatic and are requiring, or they require a tremendous amount of marketing dollars to be spent. Okay? Same problem that the Daily Wire also landed on. There is a reason why these don't make it in Hollywood. Here's the clip. Jeremy Boring in a statement. They've also made a bunch of movies. Earlier this year, the Daily Wire told Axios 12-month revenue hit $100 million for the first time in January. This is, by the way, when they were talking about how it was exploding, how the Daily Wire's revenues were exploding and how successful they were. 2022, up from roughly $65 million for the full year in 2020. Jesus Christ. That is way too much money, brother. Holy I don't know how the they are sustainable and actually making money this way. Details: the investment will go into building a line of live action and animated children's entertainment. I mean, this will destroy them. This will destroy them like it destroyed the NRA. Remember that the NRA was not destroyed by, like any organized campaign or even the district attorney, the Southern District Attorney of New York. It literally was originally destroyed by NRA TV because consistently making content is very difficult. Now, of course, the NRA did not know how to consistently make content, so they had a really bulky operation, whereas Daily Wire does know how to make consistent content, at least at a price point that makes them, I guess, make money or generate some revenue. NRA was destroyed by internal embezzling, wasn't it? Yes, internal embezzling, but also the media operation. Internal embezzling certainly played a role in it. The media operation literally was a revenue sink. It literally was just the unlimited amounts of money being pumped into the NRA TV side. And wild how I didn't know you yet. Thank you, Ethan Klein. Yep, that's from April 2nd, 2022. Contrary to what my haters might say, if you actually spend enough time in here, you will probably develop a better understanding of the world than listening to them and arriving at conclusions only because it is against the position that I'm presenting. Because that's what my haters do. They don't have actually an established worldview. They're simply reactionary to everything that I present. And therefore, because I'm right more often than I'm wrong, they find themselves wrong more often than they're right. So cut out the middleman, and instead of watching me through clips that are framed out of context, that are framed in a nefarious way, come directly to the source itself. And perhaps you will understand the world much better than you currently do.
Read from no success at all to a modest amount of success, though none of them seem satisfied with what they have achieved. They would often voice complaints that it wasn't so much their lack of talent that held them back, but rather a bias against conservatives in Hollywood. In his 2011 book, Primetime Propaganda, Ben Shapiro describes his experience of nearly getting a job as a screenwriter. For those unfamiliar with Shapiro's
I love this video so much. Oh my God. Jose is the GOAT, dude. Jose has some fantastic videos, by the way. This is amazing. It's like a reminder of all of my favorite Ben Shapiro hits. This interview is hilarious.
History. As a young conservative, he had a column and had written a few books. For his fourth book, Primetime Propaganda, he used that public profile to obtain access for several interviews with various studio executives. In that book, he describes a brief story about how he had a small opportunity to become a writer in show business. Apparently, several scripts he had written were read by studio executives and agents, and he, as a talent, was being shopped around town for a potential job. Eventually, though, his agent dropped him because of his existing writing credits, marking him as someone that people in the entertainment industry wouldn't want to work with. I should point out that one of the books Ben Shapiro had written was titled Porn Generation: How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future. More than just a provocative title, that book is also an absolutely wild read. I've never read something by a 21-year-old that calls so many female celebrities whores. There's a real incel energy to all of it.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people forget that, Ben didn't become the intellectual giant of the right overnight. He spent many, many years writing the most Hitlerian stuff about Arabs, Palestinians in general, including demanding a final solution for them. Okay, quite literally demanding a final solution for them all the way back in like 2002 for townhall.com. I am such a Ben Shapiro. I am such a Ben Shapiro scholar. The Porn Generation was also yet another disturbing book that heavily demanded censorship. Ironically enough, Mr. Freedom of Speech, I used to use this all the time as well. Mr. Free Speech wanted unimaginable censorship with the Porn Generation book, How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future. And it's like incredibly, it's an incel screed. Okay. But who could forget his works of fiction? The homoerotic fan fiction he wrote. I forget what the title of it was. Yeah. The title of the, of course, article from Town Hall is called Population Transfer is Not a Dirty Word, famously. I used to have a running bit where I would translate the speech to German and then read it out in German to help you develop a better understanding of what kind of politics Ben had. He disavows that article, yes. Well, he did. He later disavowed the article while still advocating for everything in the article. Anyway, let's keep going.
And a producer for a show like The Good Wife might not want one of its writers having a credit like that on their resume. Here's an excerpt from the book describing a performance at the 2003 MTV.
The book is Allegiance. Oh, thank you. It was Allegiance is homoerotic fan fiction of Barack Obama having gay sex, I think, with like the Iranian mullahs.
Video Music Awards.
True
the video
Allegiance.
is going to be playing alongside his words to give you an idea of how outrageous this supposedly was. The competing princesses of Pop-Tart whoredom, Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, both dressed in sluttish bridal costumes, popped out of wedding cakes, and began singing Madonna's 1984 hit, Like a Virgin. Finally, Madonna made her grand entrance, dressed in black, form-fitting S&M groom outfit. Madonna joined the two former Mouseketeers, and the three gyrated around the...
He's so horny when he's writing this stuff. I think in his mind, I have this sneaking suspicion that in his mind, this is the only way that he can actually appreciate this kind of like art that has a hint of eroticism associated with it. So he's like consuming it in anger. But deep down inside, Benny Boy does actually have an appreciation for fine arts more than any other conservative personality. For those of you who don't know, Benny Boy himself is a violinist. His father literally is I think his father was a not super famous, but like somewhat famous violinist as well. And he grew up in the world of arts in Los Angeles, California, only to become an incredibly annoying person. The other person that also obviously has an appreciation for arts, but is not as like well versed in it, is Donald Trump. But Ben Shapiro's father is a composer, yes, and he grew up in Los Angeles. And why do you know so much? Because he was like my number one ideological enemy for almost a decade. What do you mean? This is like, it was like him and Steven Crowder and Tucker Carlson. Like these guys were the top three. These guys were my actual ideological enemies. Of course, I learned so much about them over the course of my coverage. Yeah. Unlike these dumbass slop tubers, like I choose my sights on my ideological enemies carefully. I don't try to masquerade as like some kind of liberal or centrist person and then only hyper focus on like a Twitch streamer who is a out and about socialist. Okay. Another one is Charlie Kirk. Of course, I know a lot about Charlie Kirk's background as well. Now it's Asmund, Nux, and the likes. No, they're not. They're not my ideological enemies. They're utterly irrelevant. And unfortunately, I mean, they will inevitably be left in the dustbin of history. This is just a brief moment where political discourse has moved in that direction. They are not considered genuine ideological enemies. Maybe Asmongold, given his prominence as a figurehead in conservative commentary. But like, no, I don't give a about some VTuber who wants to make a name for himself by presenting me as their enemy. Just as I don't give a fuck about like sex pestiny. Those people are utterly irrelevant. They have no real convictions. They have no real firmly held beliefs, or their firmly held beliefs and convictions are not rooted within a genuine interest in changing the world. Ben Shapiro, on the other hand, is a Republican through and through. He is a party man through and through. Anyways, continue.
Staged like hookers starved for Johns. He doesn't mention the part where Missy Elliott comes out later on for some reason, but he does go on to say that Madonna kissing Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera turned young girls bisexual. I feel like I have to mention that Ben Shapiro here has the ghost of a point.
I saw a clip of Asmongold defending the I'm actually clean allegations, and it lives in my mind. This is really funny. Which fan base is this? I'm gay, white, and racist. Tel Aviv nightclubs. Oh my God. Incredible. Oh, fantastic. No notes.
Point when it comes to how women are sexualized in entertainment, but his solution isn't about empowering women. Rather, he calls them whores and says they should promote heterosexual sex after marriage. The irony of this origin story, though, is that Ben Shapiro had more of an opportunity in Hollywood than so many other aspiring writers. He had meetings with former studio executives and offers to develop a pilot. Getting an agent to read your script, never mind being brought on as a client, is a major, major opportunity. What Ben Shapiro never acknowledges is that it was his public profile as a conservative writer that got him these meetings with executives to begin with, starting him on this whole journey through Hollywood. That same public profile being his undoing seems to be lost to him. It wasn't the private ideas in his head, but the very public positions he was taking as a writer. Here's an excerpt from the Primetime Propaganda book. The quote here comes from an agent telling Ben he can't work with him. I don't know if this is a direct quote or if this is simply Ben Shapiro citing something from his memory. Listen, I have no problem with your politics. It's just that my agent started sending your sample around and it got to a producer on one of the shows. He said that he knew who you were and that he'd never work with you. The whole reason I'm even dealing with you is because your writing has that sparkle. But let me get back to you. Because it needs to be said, Ben Shapiro's creative writing is not good. I've done two.
It's not. But True Allegiance is the gay fan fiction. But also, listen. It's not like Hollywood doesn't have its fair share of freaks and conservative writers and conservative directors. There are plenty of them out there, okay? It's just you can't be a conservative and suck at the same time, or suck as hard as Ben sucks. That's it. That's the whole problem here.
Videos on that all.
Okay, don't you dare disrespect Taylor Sheridan, okay? No. Like, Taylor Sheridan is actually a good example of someone who is both conservative and also doesn't suck as hard. Some of his later work, yes, is not great. But, like, there are moments of in Taylor Sheridan's work, there are moments of watchability, okay? You can't say Taylor Sheridan's entire body of work sucks. It doesn't. That's it. Like, Clint Eastwood is a phenomenal example of this, okay? Clint Eastwood is a fantastic example of this. I'm not talking about Sorbo. Kevin Sorbo sucks through and through. He was an actor. He doesn't have any emotion. Or even James Woods, again, actor, doesn't have emotion beyond that. We're talking about directors, like people who are participating in the creative process beyond actually just acting in front of a camera. Like Mel Gibson or Clint Eastwood, like these are guys that, regardless of their reactionary freak status, at least have some glimmer of light in their writing. Okay, Denis Villeneuve is pretty right. Wait, what? No, he's Quebecois. He is a victim of colonial oppression. I will not let this slander go on. No, the man who is responsible for the Dune series is actually a man who is primarily guided by the experiences as a francophone living under the brutal colonial occupation of Anglophones in Canada. No, he is not. First of all, he's Canadian. So I feel like if you're a Canadian and also known as a Canadian, your conservatism is nothing in comparison to like the American hog. Bro has CIA cinephiles in here spreading misinformation. I know. Andrew Andrew knows a lot more than I do about this stuff, so I assume he's correct. Frank Herbert was a speechwriter for Reagan. Yes, Frank Herbert is actually a great example of this, except he also became such a hyper obsessed like Arabophile that, and also an incredible environmentalist as well simultaneously, that like it doesn't, he's all over the place. Like he doesn't count. He is a major Araboo. As a Canadian, I love how Americans talk about Canadians. It's because your worst freaks are down here ruining our politics. Yeah, Herbert was a little bit of an eco-fascist for sure. But again, I think Frank Herbert became such a Arabophile that like he's more so like a OG libertarian. All right, let's continue.
Already, give those a watch if you want to learn more. I am dubious about the second half of this quote, but the first half does reveal that it was him, specifically Ben Shapiro, not generic conservative, that was being rejected. It is interesting how Ben Shapiro, when he's rejected, doesn't look at his own personal choices that may have led to that decision, but instead retreats to this identity label he can use to pretend as if he's some kind of persecuted class. Whether or not conservatives have as many opportunities as more left-wing people in Hollywood purely based on their politics isn't really related to Ben's story, as it was very much him who was rejected for his very controversial writing credits. All of this speaks to the Daily Wire's entertainment ambitions and how they market them. They need to present this idea of conservatives being rejected by Hollywood.
Choose one to erase from history entirely, J.K. Rowling. I don't even consider J.K. Rowling's writing to be all that good. I'm sorry. I think it was like super basic always, but it was, what the heliante? J.K. Rowling, CIA, clapped me. We're back though, obviously. It was a brief minor blip. It's fine. It's not the biggest problem. The back and forth was shorter than people spamming, oh, you got killed by the TERFs. But yeah, I don't think J.K. Rowling is a brilliant author. A millennial never read Harry Potter? No, I did. I read all the books. I didn't watch the movies. I read the books. And as a child, it was a fascinating universe to delve into, but I wouldn't consider that universe to be like think about J.K. Rowling and then think about Tolkien. Or think about even George R.R. Martin. Okay? Which one is a better author? Like, it's not even on the same planet. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, in the field of fantasy, people like Tolkien or people like George Martin are so above and beyond in comparison to J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling was great at making like a super simple concept. That's it. You're talking about a person who literally named an Asian character Cho Chang. Get the out of here. She is not a good author, dude. Are you joking? She made the most like heinous depiction of Jewish people in Nazi Germany, the goblin representation, as people who handled the money. Like, she is literally the most basic author of all time. But obviously that helps. It helps for children. Anyway, let's continue.
Hollywood, because it energizes the audience who reads them. It'd be far less effective marketing if they were
Let's keep going.
They were presenting their entertainment ambitions as a product of personal bitterness over failing to succeed in the way they hoped.
Yeah,
but
Cory Booker.
In 2021, they had an opportunity to make those dreams come true, and they were going to leverage their conservative media company to make it happen. A Daily Wire article announced this entertainment initiative, and in it, Ben Shapiro wrote, "We're going to be bringing out movies, edgy, entertaining, awesome movies that won't mock your values. We're going to be producing TV shows, comedies and dramas that take you seriously and that don't take advantage of your viewership to promote leftist causes." This is the type of branding that was being used to market this initiative. That watching the movies and TV shows created by the Daily Wire would be a form of resistance against this idea that culture has been hijacked by the left and is being used to push a leftist agenda. The underlying assumption of this article is that there is this vast swath of angry conservatives ready for this entertainment, and part of how it was being marketed was through the politics of the platform activating that audience. The first partner for the Daily Wire for this project was a production company called Cinestate, headed up by a guy named Dallas Saunier. At the time, the company had just changed its name to...
Bro, literally everything they did was to farm the dumbass hogs. They basically took like the Target marketing initiative and flipped it on its head. Where you know how like Target doesn't really give a shit about gay people or whatever, but like once a year they'll be like, here's some t-shirts for you queers, you know? They do that once a year. Basically, that's what the Daily Wire was trying to do, but for racists. Where he was like, oh, you want chocolate, but you hate gay people? Eat our homophobic chocolate. And obviously, it's a failure on both fronts. Like, I don't think it's like a company actually invested in, I don't know, the queer emancipatory movement or whatever when they do a once a year t-shirt release. And I don't think people give a shit about purchasing patriotic beer. One side is virtue signaling, the other side is vice signaling. Virtue is a better way to effectively market your product than vices are. But ultimately, the only thing that matters is whether the product is good or not and affordable. That's it. That's the only thing that people care about.
Bonfire Legend. This was done a few months after one of its producers, Adam Donaghy, was charged with sexually assaulting a minor. Saunier and other members of the company were accused of covering for Donaghy's previous actions committing sexual harassment. Jeremy Boring was very aware of this reporting before teaming up with Bonfire Legend. In a Daily Beast article, he was quoted as saying, "To the extent that things may have taken place in the production of this film or another film, I don't think it's my business. In the same way that it's not my business if something takes place at any other kind of company that I buy product from. I'm sure there have been allegations of sexual harassment at almost every major production company in the country. That doesn't mean the product itself has to be banned." The first product of this union, and the one Boring was referencing in that quote, was the movie Run, Hide, Fight, best described as Die Hard set in a school shooting. I've covered this before, but a short review for it is that it's underwhelming. One mistake I saw a lot of people making when talking about this movie was describing it as being produced by the Daily Wire. It had actually wrapped production well before the deal was made with Bonfire Legend, and the movie was looking for distribution. That's really only part of the story, though. The movie was never meant to be distributed by an external company. Rather, Cinestate/Bonfire Legend was planning on releasing it under their new genre label, Rebeller. It was also a culture website that published various articles, books, and podcasts. Following the revelations about Adam Donaghy in June of 2020, Rebeller had to fold. While it's probably true that a movie about a school shooting would struggle to find a distributor, I think having the name of someone accused of sexually assaulting a minor as a producer probably hurt it even more. Also, Rebeller had something of a reputation for being more sensitive to the right. An article by Adrian Nguyen goes into some of its history and helpfully points out that the site was getting shoutouts from Ben Shapiro.
Is that why they promote policies that allow for increased school shootings? They want to make more movies about them? Yeah. Ironically, Run, Hide, Fight, if the fight part of that is conducted with weapons, it is both simultaneously a way for right-wingers to advocate for more zones where people can have guns, which also creates an environment where there's more school shootings. Because like the whole point behind like right-wingers constantly advocating for ease of access to weapons is because they claim that this will make places safer overall, when in fact, more guns means less safety and more gun violence.
Hero over a year before they went into business together. I think it's likely that Cinestate/Bonfire Legend wasn't exactly looking for a brave partner to distribute a challenging movie that woke Hollywood wouldn't touch, but rather they were looking to partner with a distributor that would take on their toxic movie. And the Daily Wire, having no entertainment production team of their own, needed a company that was at least receptive to their politics. So it was a lovely match to make some bland movies. Run, Hide, Fight was released in January of 2021, and while it gets mocked, like all of the Daily Wire's movies, for making almost no money at the box office, that's not entirely fair. In the case of Run, Hide, Fight, the only numbers I could find said that it made a little under $35,000. But it's important to remember that this movie is primarily for online distribution, and while the Daily Wire doesn't share its streaming metrics, they claim to be very pleased with its performance. And I think this might be true. There was a lot of hype surrounding this entertainment initiative when it was announced, and this was their very first movie. Even if the female lead and interracial romance would have branded it as woke had it come from Hollywood, the Daily Wire's audience was ready to ignore that and support this new front on the culture war.
No, I don't agree. That's another... I think Jose's analysis is wrong. No, that's not true. That is precisely the reason why Daily Wire... This contributes to Daily Wire's failure, because every single movie that they made suspiciously also had like Gina Carano, because that was the only recognizable talent in their movies. And Gina Carano is a woman. Not only is she a woman, but she's also kind of a brolic woman. And you know, it doesn't fit the gender stereotype that people wanted to see from the Daily Wire. And that was part of the problem. Part of the problem was that a lot of these movies that they churned out also had women in them. If you remember, people were shitting on it. People were shitting on the movies. They were like, what the why is this like, oh, well, I thought we were above this whole like female saves the men.
Back when they first announced their entertainment initiative, speaking to Deadline, the Daily Wire claimed to have 1 movie and 2 TV shows in development, but it takes a long time to produce programming. From here, we got a very long dry spell of new releases. The next release for the Daily Wire was Shut In, a thriller about a woman trapped in a closet while her drug addict ex threatens their children. Whereas Run, Hide, Fight was a finished product that the Daily Wire distributed, Shut In was the first movie they took a hand in producing. The script had been found by Dallas Sonye, and originally Jason Bateman was attached to direct. But the pandemic threw the project into disarray, and it ended up at the Daily Wire instead, with DJ Caruso now directing. This is probably the best of the Daily Wire's movies insofar that it's fairly average. The first 2/3 I would even describe as good, until it's let down by a very messy ending. There was some controversy surrounding the movie, as it included Vincent Gallo, who hadn't appeared in a movie since 2013, in part because of his behavior online, making various bigoted remarks, such as saying women shouldn't have the right to vote. On the business side of things, the Daily Wire did make one choice that seemed a bit odd. That was to first release Shut In on YouTube for free. It would air as a live stream, and anyone who missed that live stream or wanted to watch the movie again would have to sign up for the Daily Wire subscription.
Don't you think you're turning into a lib centrist to make your ideology more digestible to bigots? I'm turning into a lib centrist? I spent the first couple of hours on Joe Biden after his cancer diagnosis. What are you talking about? I'm turning into a lib centrist.
Service. They had actually done this for Run, Hide, Fight as well, although that movie had already premiered at the Venice Film Festival.
Sir, I'm not a liberal, nor am I a centrist. I'm apolitical. I'm looking for my apolitical hat, but I can't find it. It's not within reach. But I'm apolitical. Take my word for it.
A very limited international release. That led to a write-up in Deadline where the strategy was briefly described like this. The film is also being sold to international distributors by Voltage Pictures. Those buyers may not be thrilled by the update. Jeremy Boring explained that the stream would be limited to the US only, though I'm not sure how successful that was since I was able to watch that just fine in Canada. It's possible viewers of the Daily Wire might have had a hint on where to get a VPN.
We use ExpressVPN.
The only numbers I could find for Shut In pegged its box office at roughly $715,000, which is actually the most a Daily Wire movie has made at the international box office. The broadcast on YouTube first strategy would be used again for their next movie, The Hyperions. Like Run, Hide, Fight, this is another movie that had been produced prior, but failed to
You aren't apolitical? You're a terrorist sympathizer? Excuse me, I'm apolitical.
find distribution. There isn't much to say about this one aside from it being pretty forgettable, and that since none of the actors involved had any idea it would be on the Daily Wire, we don't have to hold it against Cary Elwes or anybody else. What's probably most notable about this initiative so far is just how little impact it made. Unless you're a longtime viewer of this channel, or like digging through my older videos, you've probably never heard of or don't remember any of these movies. This isn't really a surprise. It's incredibly difficult to break through to mainstream attention in the movie space. But considering the money being spent, the Daily Wire was falling well short of its lofty goals. In spite of Shut In and The Hyperions landing with a thud in the first half of 2022, the Daily Wire was still riding high. It began releasing publicly numbers of its subscriber count and total revenue, declaring that it had 600,000 subscribers and revenue was projected at $100 million. By the end of the year, these numbers would be revised.
No politic here. Israel _1. No politic here. Israel #1.
To over 1 million subscribers and up to $200 million in revenue. The movies I mentioned likely weren't fueling most of the growth. In fact, what was fueling that growth was almost certainly the June 2022 release of the Daily Wire's biggest success, Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? According to comments from Dallas Saunier, who produced the movie, its budget of $1 million was returned roughly 30-fold, and it became the most watched thing on the Daily Wire Plus platform.
Israel high. Israel high. Israel number one. That's right. Israel high.
Didn't exactly come out of nowhere, as anyone who was on YouTube at the time remembers just how ubiquitous the ads for this movie were.
Yeah, oh my God, bro. They pumped the ads so aggressively on this dude.
Aggressively marketed itself, with some public examples of spending being tens of thousands of dollars for high-profile articles on their website. This movie almost certainly had a lot more than that spent on advertising. Whatever the cost that went into promoting the project, though, it certainly paid off. While the movie itself is a giant pile of anti-trans misinformation, it was undoubtedly a success for the Daily Wire, and you'll notice it's far closer to what made the Daily Wire famous in the first place, providing a polished sheen to conservative talking points, creating something that looks like a documentary but isn't much more than an op-ed written by someone with a childlike understanding of science. This is what their audience wants. On the other hand, there was another June 2022 release from the Daily Wire that was far less successful, the movie Terror on the Prairie, starring Gina Carano. This Western was meant to be Carano's big debut in a starring role following her dismissal from Disney after she compared being conservative in America to being Jewish in 1940s Germany. Carano had made those remarks in 2021 and was quickly signed by the Daily Wire to star in 2 movies for them. The first movie,
more like being a Jew in America in the Upper East Side in 2025, where everybody is ham-ass. That's right. The only people that are as attacked as the American conservative are the American Jews. Do you know how many times I walk past free parking signs and I think to myself, this must say Free Palestine? Do you understand me? Do you know how terrifying that is? I'm already terrified because I walk down the street. I'm walking. That's already terrifying for me because I can't even park my F-350. I can't even park my F-350 in the goddamn parking lots. It's too big. It's too big. It's too based. It's too American. Okay? And then I see Mexicans everywhere, which is also terrifying. Who knows what they're up to? Probably illegal. And then Hamas propaganda everywhere.
It was supposed to be titled White Knuckle, but it was put on hiatus after COVID vaccine requirements for filming led to Carano pulling out. Instead, the Western Terror on the Prairie would be developed instead, as it was shooting in Montana, a state with less strict regulations on vaccinations for a film set. The deal the Daily Wire made with Carano seems to have been a very bad one. Aside from her Western making almost no impact, the cost of starting up production on another movie, only for Carano to cancel because of vaccine requirements, was a complete waste of money, especially since the movie was never made at all. The juxtaposition of Terror on the Prairie and What is a Woman say a lot about this company, though. One was an attempt to make a mainstream feature, the other a pseudo-documentary for their conservative base. The first movie was a flop, the other was a success. It should have been a hint as to what path the Daily Wire should be focusing on. Instead, they would continue to try.
Yeah, but the documentary, if you want to call it that, is basically a Matt Walsh YouTube video, but 3 hours long. That's it. Yeah, they should have leaned into making YouTube videos that are more expensive to make, I guess, instead of trying to make like works of fiction.
Try walking down both. At the end of June, the Daily Wire hosted a massive presentation where they announced Daily Wire Plus, a rebranding of their subscription service, I suspect to sound like Disney Plus. The initiative included a new deal with PragerU and signing Jordan Peterson as a talent. This event, hosted at this large theater, was the Daily Wire at its peak. Its subscriber count had nearly doubled that year, and its revenue was following in suit. Immediately using...
I call cap on this too, by the way. I think I have no proof for this. I have no evidence for this. But given the downfall of the Daily Wire and how swift it was, I suspect that the first year subscription numbers were perhaps maybe a little massaged, maybe mass purchasing of subscriptions from a financier, for example. We will never know. I don't know the legality of such things, but I do personally believe in my heart of hearts, with no evidence for this whatsoever, with the exception of how fast their rise and fall was, that they may have perhaps massaged the numbers a little bit to make it seem like they were raking in the revenue, because there's no world where they are spending this much money. Okay, they're wasting this much money making ass movies that no one is watching. They're not actually getting. They're not actually generating revenue. They're not in the green. They claim to be, but they're not. They're only in the green because of the subscription numbers, and all the while, like their entire output has dramatically reduced.
All that money to expand seemed like a great idea, but they vastly overestimated their ability to grow. After Terror on the Prairie, we wouldn't get another original movie from the Daily Wire for 1.5 years. And so far, it's the only one we've gotten since then. And that's the movie Lady Ballers. This anti-trans movie is the most cynical admission of what the Daily Wire's entertainment division would devolve into, playing to a conservative audience as the Daily Wire staff act out their Hollywood.
You're being a hypocrite. Everybody knows 80% of your subscribers are financed by clutter. This is true. I would not have a career if it wasn't for the beautiful nation of Qatar. Okay, let's be real. Everybody knows my biggest funders are the state of Qatar.
Ambitions. The animated series Mr. Bertram is more of the same.
This was
While
also
earlier
a massive
efforts
failure.
were mostly forgettable, these newer ones are outright embarrassing. It's a clear example of amateurs producing long, boring comedies about sad men giving off intense divorced guy energy. That being said,
Burning her a gift. Thank you. Coming in straight from the wonderful state of Qatar.
though, in the case of Lady Ballers, Jeremy Boring would describe it as the second most watched piece of content on Daily Wire Plus. As miserable as that movie may be, much like What is a Woman, it reflects what this particular audience wants. And it's very different from that attempt to reach the mainstream that were initially part of the Daily Wire's entertainment initiative.
I never would make a movie for political purposes. I feel like movies have been political for generations, but I feel like when things get overtly political or agenda pushing, I tend to believe that it hurts the artwork.
Had this been the Daily Wire's game plan from the get-go, I think things would have gone very differently. But as it stands, they spent a lot of money to get
like
where
Batman or
everyone
Halo. Thank you for the
imagined they were
7
going to
gifted.
go in the first place. But while these movies and TV shows could be considered a modest failure, there was one major entertainment initiative that was a far bigger failure for the Daily Wire, and that's its kids' entertainment strategy. This was announced back in March of 2022 as the Daily Wire bravely declared it would invest $100 million over the course of 3 years to create kids programming. Much like their earlier entertainment initiative, this was also marketed as entertainment that didn't include leftist messages that were attempting to brainwash.
This, I swear to God, I invented this. Early heads of the show, early fans of the show know I used to have a bit where I would make fun of like conservatives being like, these children's stories are too woke. Sharing is caring. That's communism. And they unironically did that. Like they literally did that. It's like, be kind to your neighbor. How about you fear your neighbor? Okay. What do you mean be kind to your neighbor? It's stranger danger all the way, baby, especially if they look Mexican.
People.
To succeed in our effort to create a true news and entertainment alternative for the millions of Americans who are tired of the hegemony of the woke giants that want to preach radical race and gender theory to our kids. We're not here to teach the kids in the guise of entertainment. This is entertainment with a capital E. Rob Schneider is a true entertainer.
After this announcement, it would be a year and a half,
No, he's not.
October of 2023, before we saw this kid streaming service, Bent Key, come to fruition. There was a minor bit of controversy when the streaming service's flagship series, Chip Chilla, was accused of being a Bluey ripoff.
New TV series Chip Chilla is being dubbed a bootleg Bluey.
There were also fears that these shows would contain conservative brainwashing that were largely overblown, as most of these programs were bland, generic kids' entertainment. After the launch of BentKey, no one really paid much attention to its lineup of original titles and licensed kid shows. I kept an eye on it myself to see if its metrics ever changed, and the few I could spot weren't particularly encouraging. When it first dropped, there were a flurry of downloads for the BentKey app, and these were almost certainly largely members of the Daily Wire audience with kids or those who simply wanted to support the platform. While the Daily Wire wouldn't release how many people had subscribed to it, we could at least check the Google Play Store, which had the slightly vague metric of 50,000 plus downloads listed on the app's page. The Apple Store likely had similar numbers, as the app had similar reviews on both storefronts. It would be over a year before that number went from 50,000 plus downloads to 100,000 plus downloads. In all likelihood, there are probably less than 400,000 downloads for this service, and we have no idea how many of those free downloads led to someone actually purchasing a $100 annual subscription. Even if every single person who downloaded the BentKey app purchased a $100 subscription, that still wouldn't even reach half of the 100 million that was pledged for the service. But the real kicker here is that these numbers and estimates I'm giving are way too generous. Because while it's true it does cost $100 for new subscribers who are getting BentKey for the first time, if someone is an existing Daily Wire Plus subscriber, they got BentKey for free. With BentKey's download numbers dwarfing the subscriber count of Daily Wire Plus, we could only really guess at how many Daily Wire Plus subscribers got BentKey, but I imagine since they were the first ones to hear about it and most of the downloads for this service seem to come in its first month, most people who are using this service aren't paying for it. I doubt there's any way this massive investment made any sort of profit. In fact, it almost certainly cost the company millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. The irony here is that as a streaming service offering entertainment, BentKey shows a lot of lessons learned. One of the biggest problems with the Daily Wire Plus, presenting itself as some kind of hub for entertainment, is that it only has a few movies. The overwhelming majority of the stuff on there are conservative documentaries or video versions of their podcasts. In short, it's for people who want conservative news commentary. Sticking a couple of movies on there isn't going to make someone think they should get that instead of Netflix unless they want that conservative news commentary. No one signs up to Netflix to watch one movie a year. That part only happens when you forget about your Netflix subscription and it auto-renews because you keep forgetting that you have it. BentKey actually made an attempt to provide volume with a decent number of titles at launch. Of course, it was hurt by the fact that no one really knew what most of these titles were. And with services like Disney Plus actually having shows and movies parents have heard of, there's no reason to take a chance on a streaming service with shows that have no cultural footprint in your primary market of the United States. The one high-profile show they did eventually add to the BentKey service was the original G.I. Joe cartoon, which is something people have at least heard of, although it seems like it's more for dads looking to relive their childhood than something a kid would be into. One move that might have helped salvage BentKey was when they announced their own version of Snow White.
Yeah.
It was a bit baffling a move because it was done entirely despite Disney, which is part of how they got in the whole BentKey debacle to begin with. But by attaching a conservative personality like Brett Cooper to it, they could maybe tap into that same resentment that made a movie like Lady Ballers a hit. But it seems like that movie might never happen for several reasons. The first one being that
This is the worst part about the Daily Wire's fall from grace and turning into the Faily Wire is that we'll never see our queen as Snow White. Yes. Brett Cooper, also known as Femme Shabibo, left the Faily Wire.
In late March, it was reported that the Daily Wire laid off a number of its staffers, specifically in its kids' entertainment department.
I guess they could do reshoots with Ben in a dress, if we're being real, considering there's not much daylight between the two, in terms of looks especially. So I don't know why they didn't just keep going with Ben in drag, but...
Nicole, who left the Babylon Bee to help develop programming for the Daily Wire, confirmed that everyone who created original programming for BentKey got laid off. The Snow White movie had another big problem as well, as its star, Brett Cooper, had left the company a few months earlier. and we have no idea how far into production that movie got before her departure. More on that later, because I should also mention the other big entertainment investment the Daily Wire made, the Pendragon cycle. The rights to produce a series based on the Pendragon cycle books was announced in 2022, alongside a new plan to adapt Atlas Shrugged. The Ayn Rand adaptation hasn't been mentioned since, but we have seen Jeremy Boring go hands-on to direct the Pendragon cycle series. The various production diaries that have been posted online reveal a very expensive production. There is a big crew, stunts, special effects, and all the requirements that make TV productions of fantasy shows so expensive. This series is a very big bet. It was originally scheduled to come out in late 2023, though that release date has been pushed back, and as of early 2025, there's still no sign of the series. Similar to Benki, the Pendragon cycle appears as though it's a passion project for Jeremy Boring, something he personally championed and invested enormous resources into. Boring's departure from the company.
Oh, it's so awesome. It's so awesome that these failed artists never gave up. Listen, I will say fair is fair, okay? Because sometimes a failed artist can't get into art school and then, Nazi Germany. At least these guys are failed artists who just kept trying to make art. You know what I mean? And they might be Nazis in their politics, but at least they didn't redevelop the Fourth Reich. They support the Fourth Reich, but they didn't, play a personal role in the development of the Fourth Reich. Just saying. Partially because they're still trying to make art. They're too busy trying to relive what glory they perceive as lost from them or stolen from them by woke.
Company, I suspect, has something to do with all these massive investments and their limited or non-existent returns. The Pendragon cycle in particular looks to be a massive money sink. The show would need to be a breakout hit for it to be in any way profitable for the Daily Wire, and I suspect that simply isn't going to happen. Also, it shows us the Daily Wire hasn't fully learned the lessons it needed to from Ladyballers. Its audience doesn't want mainstream entertainment. They want conservative coded movies that speak to their biases. In essence, they want a right-wing version of what they imagine Hollywood to be. It's not that they hate political messaging in entertainment, they just want it to be their political messaging. One of the big assumptions made by Jeremy Boring in this whole entertainment initiative was that there was a massive audience waiting for productions he considered politically neutral.
Go ahead, Disney, make $25 billion worth of content inculcating radical gender and race theory in children who are 6 years old.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're too angry. They're too angry to make art. That's it. They are entirely too angry to make art. It's the same principle behind all these right-wing that spend all of their time criticizing the video games that do come out. And when you ask them, where's your video game, Grums? They have nothing to show for it. So many people basically in the gaming sphere have completely dropped any sort of interest in playing video games whatsoever. They just care about the drama of on developers that they perceive as being too gay or woke.
I don't have that money to spend on marketing. I'm glad you do. I know that 50% of everyone who encounters that content is going to want to come over to dailywire.com and subscribe here instead.
What Boring fails to understand is that, while a large percentage of Americans vote Republican, they aren't all clamoring for a platform like his to start presenting movies and TV shows. If someone really wants politically neutral entertainment, why would you go to a partisan political platform?
Yep.
The only thing that might have made them have a chance is if they had a large selection of quality entertainment that people have actually heard of. But less than a dozen movies and a weak animated series after 4 years isn't nearly enough to win over a mainstream audience. This is especially true for Benki, which failed spectacularly and was so obviously a bad move. There were signs of a better strategy where they actually licensed programs and produced several originals to come out at the same time, but the $100 price point for a service with no recognizable shows in a landscape filled with competitors offering better deals with more programming wasn't realistic. And to have invested so much money, reaching roughly $30 million in its first year, is just a spectacular waste. If that massive audience waiting for conservative branded TV and movies exists, it certainly didn't show up for the Daily Wire. Investing into money pits like entertainment weren't the only mistakes made by the Daily Wire. Their terrible management of high-profile personalities was also another mistake. There was a minor blow-up in early 2023 when Steven Crowder went public with a contract he considered unfair that the Daily Wire offered him. This
Double oof. Oh my God, this was such a glorious day. God, all my enemies died. And from the ashes of their blossoming media careers came a cockroach that can withstand the nuclear holocaust. Asmongold is pretty crazy. Like, he basically sucked up most of these guys' audiences. It is wild to think about.
more or less blew over when footage of Crowder being verbally abusive to his pregnant wife before they eventually divorced surfaced. There were a few
Slave contract, $50 million slave contract. Not just withstand, but thrive. A roach rose from the ashes like the phoenix of filth. Yeah. Look, everyone's time will come. Okay. And I'm not just saying that for hopium or copium or whatever. It's just when you don't have real moral conviction and the only thing you care about is just engaging in reactionary slop propaganda is only going to take you so far. There will come a day when the political tide will change. There will come a day where you fly too close to the sun and you won't be able to withstand the negativity that is associated with such things. And the reason why I say that is because I fly too close to the sun all the time. I live in this space filled to the brim with death threats and doxings and swattings and all this shit. But the reason why it doesn't bother me as much and the reason why I can still continue is because I believe in the things that I'm saying. If you don't believe in the things that you're saying, there will inevitably come a day where the things you're saying will no longer be considered fashionable. Like, this is what I mean. Look, there has never been a moment where Asmongold has not surpassed me in viewership. Asmongold has always been one of the largest content creators on this platform. If you noticed, I didn't really give a shit about that at all. As a matter of fact, I've said this. I've said that he is a much larger content creator than me. Right now, however, he's reaching those levels of prominence from conservative commentary. That's why I typed it, because you don't care. Okay, well, it seems like you care more than I do, right? If Asmongold got 100K viewers playing video games, great. I don't give a shit. It's awesome. Asmongold getting that level of prominence doing conservative political commentary, however, spells trouble for political discourse and its future in this country. That's it. Because it means that people are looking for even dumber and dumber reactionary slop rather than at least like ideologically minded propaganda that used to come from the likes of Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, who would at the very least entertain the conservative think tank talking points that came directly from the American Enterprise Institute or the Heritage Foundation or the Manhattan Institute. That's it. But considering that his viewers are people who fancy themselves to be apolitical, those guys will change with the tides. They will change their political perspective with the tides. And the Trump train will inevitably run out of gas or coal, if you want to extend the analogy. Why do right-wing folk always think it's a jealousy thing? Same thing when we criticize billionaires, et cetera, is purely projection. I think it's because their worldview relies on having enemies. Their worldview relies on having ideological enemies, because you can't really build a vision for a future society as a reactionary if there's nothing to react to. Because if you were to be honest about a conservative future and were to design it, if you were to design a conservative future, most other conservatives that are in the margins would go, oh, I don't know if I want to live in that. That seems kind of because when expanded to its logical conclusion, a conservative vision of society, a reactionary vision of society is basically just Israel or Nazi Germany. And most people understandably don't want to live in Israel or Nazi Germany. Even conservatives who think that they are in this battle fighting against like progressives or people that have gone too woke, they only join the ranks of conservatives because they think liberals have gotten too out of hand. Progressives have gotten too out of hand. They have negatively polarized themselves towards the Democratic Party because they think the Democratic Party is the vision for a leftist future. This is why conservative movements are destined to fail unless there is genuine ideological conviction that's grounding them. And I don't think there is. I mean, I'm sure there's like some real ass Nazis in there in those groups, but for the most part, I think it's an ideology destined for failure.
Elements of this feud between Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire I want to highlight, particularly a phone call you recorded.
What is this? Ollie ever Jacoby Unleashed. Maybe you should have shown some more Houthi music videos. The tide would change faster. What? Chatter. What's interesting about this is you're in here mentioning him. You're the one who mentioned him. And you're not him. Like, I'm a content creator. You're a chatter. You're a chatter fighting his battles in this chat. Who do you think is more pathetic in this regard? And the person that you're defending is Asmongold. Under normal circumstances, if you were to show his content or commentary to like average people in your life, I think they would probably think less of you. I'll be honest. Like, imagine showing, let's say you go to school. You probably don't. I assume you're a NEET. But let's say you were going to school and you were like, hey, you want to see my favorite content creator? And it's a dude with roaches crawling over him who says insane shit with regular frequency. I feel like most people would think less of you in the real world. That's it. So I find it particularly funny when Asmongold fans will also then come in here to be like, you don't know the things you talk about. Brother, your favorite political commentator is Asmongold. Like, what do you mean? You're not in here for knowledge. You're not invested in the realm of politics for developing a vision of society that you think is going to be one where everybody thrives. The f do you mean? Asmongold is successful because he even knows less than Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is biased. He is a propagandist. He lies with regular frequency for a political vision, but at least he has one. Asmon doesn't even have that. At least he, went to college and went to law school and knows how to write, even though his output is disgusting. You are not even embarrassed to come into an actual political commentary stream to say that your favorite content creator that you want to defend is Asmongold. That's an automatic disqualifier. Coming in here and saying like, oh, dude, I get my notes from SlopTubers is hilarious. You've already given the game away. You get your notes from a guy who doesn't even believe half the shit he's saying because he knows that dumb like you will go, oh, yeah, he's based. And then you try to, as soon as the reality sets in, you turn around and say, we're all cogs in a machine. You think we're making a difference. Like, you're not being thoughtful when you say this, okay? No one thinks you're brilliant for making this statement. We know that political action takes time, okay? We know that political action takes time. It requires a tremendous undertaking, okay? It takes decades. That unfortunate reality is what causes people to actually develop nihilistic tendencies and to only cover politics from the framework of drama, only be interested in politics from the framework of drama, a back and forth between a content creator that you've identified as an ideological enemy versus a content creator that you've identified as one on your side. That's it. I appreciate that coming from a SlopTuber who claims to do journalism. That's funny, little bro. Brother, once again, the reason why you feel this way, the reason why you feel the way that you do is because of the communities that you occupy online. You think that these communities actually are worth a damn in the real world, but they're not. That's it. There is a reason why you will consistently be confused over and over again for years to come about how why don't all these other mainstream media outlets actually recognize this person for the fraud that he actually is? Why is it that like journalists and academics keep coming onto this dude's broadcast? This makes no sense. Don't they all see the YouTube videos that I watch? Perhaps, one, that perspective online in the SlopTuber commentary sphere is not convincing to actual adults who are knowledgeable on the issues that I speak on. Or perhaps it's not enough to develop a comprehensive perspective of a person's worldview or commentary on any subject matter when the only introduction you have to said subject matter is a negatively framed 17-second clip. Once you identify this contradiction and internalize it, you will be able to expand your consciousness. Okay? I don't claim to be a journalist. I do, however, sometimes engage in journalism. Okay? I'm a political commentator. I'm a Twitch streamer. But there is a reason why at least respected journalists do consider this community and what I do to be worthwhile. Once you identify what that reason is, you will perhaps open up your mind to new concepts that you never thought was previously possible to understand.
Recorded with Jeremy Boring about a contract he was offered. It gave us some insight into the Daily Wire's hiring policies.
Bench talent, young talent, they don't get deals like this.
So they don't get deals that...
They can be wage slaves for a little bit, come over and make a salary and grow their brand.
This is an important bit of information that gives us a sense of how the Daily Wire treats its talent, particularly its new talent, paying them slave wages while their online identity is being built, and then possibly offering them a bigger contract down the line. Steven Crowder's initial offer had a staggering dollar figure of $50 million over 4 years, a fact Crowder didn't share at the time. Far more damaging for the Daily Wire than the Steven Crowder controversy was the departure of Candace Owens. She had joined the platform in 2021 and starred in the program called Candace. In March of 2024, Candace Owens' departure was announced by Jeremy Boring on Twitter. The reason for her departure was never made entirely clear, though many assumed it was her butting heads publicly with Ben Shapiro, particularly over the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This explanation, while logical, has a few confounding facts. Candace Owens' support for the Palestinian people doesn't seem entirely genuine. In fact, in 2019, she tweeted that...
Yep. In her defense, supporting terrorists in the Middle East seems to me like to be the next logical step for a party that defends MS-13. Demands open borders and hates Jewish people and babies. Separately, how funny if Trump just deported her. That's Candace Owens on May 6, 2019. Jose, once again, coming in hot with the now, I assume, now deleted Candace Owens tweets.
Congressional Representative Ilhan Omar should be deported for criticizing the ongoing violence in Gaza. While it might be tempting to say her turn on Israel was a result of the state's actions after October 7th in 2023, it appears her pivot started almost a year prior when she retweeted an anti-Zionist statement from Max Blumenthal, leading to a public confrontation with Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure why or how Candace Owens turned in her Zionist card in these intervening years, but she seems very aware that making comments like the ones she made in November of 2022 would annoy her boss. Owens would continue to make comments like,
I think Candace Owens knows that the pro-Palestinian route is not necessarily enough to launch her career into the next level, but the anti-Semitic route certainly is. The pro-Palestinian route offers him intellectual honesty in the eyes of onlookers that are not familiar with her entire commentary, right? They look at her and they hear, oh, well, she's brave. She's bravely speaking out against something that mainstream media refuses to speak to. But that's simply just a cover for her. It's a cover for her to actually do the things that do make her popular, which is to say anti-Semitic things. And yes, I am saying it. Anti-Semitism is an opportunity for a career nowadays. It didn't used to be, because there was a fucking stranglehold, understandably, on anti-Semitic rhetoric. Well, whenever someone was being anti-Semitic, they would get clapped, they would get banned, okay? Understandably, because anti-Semitism before October 7 either was used as a weapon against those who dare criticize Israel still, but also anti-Semitism before October 7 was seen as like the primary marker of fascist sentiment. I think it still is the primary marker of growing fascism in this country. But unfortunately, fascism has become infinitely more normalized in the commentary sphere. Why would she take the anti-Semitic route? I honestly don't understand why she would do that, because she's an independent careerist. And as someone who wants to develop an audience, in the independent sphere, you might have noticed there are very few content creators on the right-wing side that aren't anti-Semitic, that are still popular. Tim Pool is another great example of this. Tim Pool did not go the anti-Semitism route, but it went the kind of pro-Israel route. And look at his numbers now. Virtually the entirety of the right-wing audiences want someone to, at the very, either A, attack people like myself without actually showing their full perspective on the matter, Asmongold, okay, or even go so far as to, say heinous shit about Muslims all the goddamn time, or they want people to come across like they are straightforwardly anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. It's very difficult to be right now. It's very difficult, I think, in the right-wing commentary sphere to be a pro-Israel content creator, especially for younger audiences. They've completely dropped it. Right-wing audiences have most audiences under a certain age demographic have completely dropped support for Israel. It's over. I don't pay attention to the numbers. Did Tim Pool fall off? Yes. Anyway.
Like these until eventually she left the company.
Literally the only thing I type about is how identical Asmongold chat and Hasan chats are, and how identical Asmongold and Hasan Abi are streamers who cater to the hive mind chat. Ironic because you're in here, but if you were to actually show a point of contention to Asmongold in a similar vein, he probably wouldn't pull you up. He would probably ban you. So if you're right-wing and don't support Israel, you're anti-Semitic and a fascist? No. Candace Owens is. I wouldn't say every single right-wing person is. There are plenty of right-wing people that don't hate Israel because it's the Jewish nation state. They hate Israel because they see the dead babies and they think that's really fucked up. Or they see the dead babies, they think it's really fucked up, and it's additionally fucked up because it's being paid for with our tax dollars, and they can't stand the arrogance of Benjamin Netanyahu and other pro-Israel accounts or pro-Israeli politicians that come out and actually undermine American civil liberties at the behest of Israel and its objectives, its policy objectives. There are absolutely right-wingers that are agnostic in terms of their analysis of Jews or whatever, but simultaneously don't like what Israel is doing. It's totally understandable, dude. What do you mean? There's only so much death and destruction that the average person can look at and go, yeah, this is fine. This is totally acceptable. This is great.
There are rumors floating about saying that she wanted to get out of her contract or that some sort of gag order was placed on her, but it's been difficult to confirm any of that. And it's quite likely that Candace Owens is happy to play into controversy that raises her profile. What is undeniable is that Owens' departure is a huge...
Go look at it. Asmongold's chat never stops talking about Hasan. Hasan's never stopped talking about Asmongold. Asmongold's chat never stops talking about me because they have no other way of understanding politics. They have to see it from the framework of drama. My chat talks about Asmongold every now and then because he says some insane shit as a prominent right-wing content creator. That's it. Also, he has Hasan emotes in his chat. I don't have Asmongold emotes unless you think the Roach emote is an Asmongold emote, in which case, that's just a universal one. Like, you're talking about a group of people whose political understanding is like whether or not there's like a black woman lead in a video game. That's not real politics at all. Of course they're going to constantly talk about me. I am the number one beacon for people who don't I'm the number one beacon for people who don't actually have any like real worldview or moral convictions, but simply hate everything that they consider to be woke and DEI.
Huge loss for the Daily Wire, as she has gone on to have massive success since leaving. She is getting millions of views on her YouTube channel, which mixes celebrity news and absurd conspiracy theories. Another talent the Daily Wire lost was Brett Cooper. While Owens was a known commodity before signing with the Daily Wire, Cooper was more or less plucked from obscurity. Some producers at the Daily Wire created the format for her show, and then she was...
Yeah, I had the international media talking about me too, but that's not the first time that Asmongold has been talking about me, and that's not the first time that they used my face as a emote in their community chatter. It's been going on for quite a while. For someone like... Listen, dude, look, it's this simple. Are you ready for this? For someone like Asmongold, who presents himself as apolitical or nuanced or a centrist, while also doing right-wing commentary, he can't just come out and repeat American Enterprise Institute talking points, because that's boring. And most of his audience is not invested in that. That's why they analyze Trump from the perspective of content. They're like, oh, he's the content president. He's doing so much content. If you do not have a larger scope of understanding, a framework of understanding that like Trump's actions are probably going to impact you in a harmful way, then you look at it because you feel from your position of privilege, which is not even correct. You're not even privileged in that regard usually, but you feel like these are policy positions that you're sheltered from, and it's simply actually destroying your ideological enemies, the wokes of the world, the DEIs and and that's precisely the reason why you angle your commentary from the framework of constantly being at contest with someone who does care about about being an opposing figure, an ideological enemy to the Trump administration. That's it. That's all it is.
Hired to fill that role. Shortly after, she became very popular at the Daily Wire, with her show, The Comments Section, being one of the most viewed at the company. Cooper had become so ingrained into the Daily Wire that she was set to appear in the Snow White movie and the Pendragon cycle, only the latter of which actually wrapped filming, so we know she'll at least still be appearing in that, assuming it ever gets released. Brett Cooper announced she was leaving the Daily Wire in December of 2024. Much like Candace Owens' departure, Cooper has largely remained tight-lipped about why she left, although she did offer a diplomatic farewell.
Today, December 10th, will be my last day hosting the comment section and working for the Daily Wire. It is not true that I am being forced out. It was my own choice to leave. And believe me, this is bittersweet.
The comments section has gone on without Brett Cooper, with her producer Reagan Conrad taking on hosting duties. I can only assume the Daily Wire believed that since they created the format, they could swap hosts and move on like normal. Only this isn't like replacing Johnny Carson with Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, because it's easier to click on a new video than find a different TV show to watch at 11:30 on a weekday evening. The response to Conrad has been very hostile, with lots of nasty comments and a huge drop-off in views. And undoubtedly, the comments section is a shell of what it once was. This cynical host swap is very much what you'd see on Fox News or some other traditional media outlet, completely misunderstanding the digital space and the importance of personalities. What's funny about Brett Cooper's goodbye is she expresses this vague desire for new challenges and new endeavors.
I am ready to take on a new direction, both personally and professionally. This means new challenges and new endeavors, which I will share with you soon.
Apparently, this means starting a YouTube channel where she is doing more or less the exact same show, but probably keeping more of the money. Much like Candace Owens, Brett Cooper started her own independent show and is racking up some very impressive numbers, mostly talking about celebrity culture with an embedded right-wing framing. The Daily Wire must look at these numbers and regret their mistake in letting Cooper go. Whatever she might have been asking for, they probably should have paid it. I can't help but think about the contract the Daily Wire offered Steven Crowder, and I wonder if Candace Owens and Brett Cooper noticed it too. Were they not being offered the big $50 million deals? Or did they simply grow frustrated working to build up a company neither of them need? Or perhaps they believed they deserved ownership of the show that is built around their talent. All we can really do is speculate, but the important...
They lost two of their major talents, and the last remaining major talent is Matt Walsh. And Matt Walsh is in a unique predicament as well. I think a big part... Number one, they tried to do blue chip, big ticket, big budget Hollywood productions. That's a costly endeavor. You don't have the audience for it. You're not going to be able to get into it because you don't have the talent for it. That ate away at the healthy runway that they had created for themselves, which I speculate they got from big donors by way of subscription revenue, right? Then they lost Brett Cooper, who was a genuine talent, a rising talent, even though she was astroturfed into that position of prominence. It doesn't matter. She legitimately became a talent on her own. Same with Candace Owens. And the last one that they have that remains is Matt Walsh. It's kind of interesting because like at least Candace Owens and like Brett Cooper, they do have a decent way of understanding the world of commentary and like slamming their political perspectives into culture issues that people care about, leaning heavily on the algorithm. Whereas Matt Walsh makes his money when Matt Walsh basically makes his money entirely from being a hateful little bigot, like a hateful little monster, right? If Brett is AstroTurf, you're AstroTurf. I don't think you can compare the amount of money spent on Brett Cooper to develop her as a talent at the Daily Wire to no money that was spent on me at TYT. Like I became a notable figure in political commentary after I left the Young Turks, not before. Whereas her content was basically created partially because they looked deeply into the type of content that I was making, the type of content that was successful in the realm of political commentary, and basically build a set for her to make it seem like she was talking out of her bedroom.
Part for the Daily Wire is that two of their major talents leaving meant a big drop in viewing numbers, and quite likely a loss in ad revenue and memberships. Although not as high profile, another failure of the Daily Wire was its publishing line. Launched in
You guys are the ones that astroturf me, I guess. I'm grassroots in the most honest sense because my primary source of revenue is you. Watchers who subscribe, who don't even need to, but simply choose to subscribe or gift subs. That's the only form of revenue. I don't run any ads. I don't even farm revenue off of my VODs. I let people literally make money on their own if they want to, off of my VODs that they will re-upload onto YouTube. I say no to advertising all the time. Part of my commentary already limits the amount of ads that I can get. Okay? Like, that's it. I'm in bed with Big Chatter. Exactly. And Qatar, of course. The glorious nation of Qatar and the Emir of Qatar. What? Please explain what's a genocide and how is Israel doing it? Yeah, here. There you go. How do I respond? Watch this video. Is Israel doing a genocide? It'll be like I'm responding to you directly, Chatter.
2021, it featured books by Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and other figures on the right. Although most of its books you probably wouldn't recognize, you might at least be familiar with the Johnny the Walrus children's book that Matt Walsh published, one of the few successes for the line. It eventually closed up in August of 2024. Alyssa Cordova, who was leading the imprint, spoke to Semaphore and said, Daily Wire was actually quite successful with the books we did publish by industry standards, but traditional book publishing is high effort and low margin and doesn't make sense for the pace of our business right now. The article goes on to highlight comparative sales between traditional publishers and conservative upstart publishers, showing how most of the titles offered by conservative publishers in the last few years have struggled to find the same level of success as books by conservative authors coming from traditional publishers. Cordova was reportedly part of the layoffs that hit the Daily Wire in March, though she would later clarify that she voluntarily resigned. This small failure represents one thing that I think is actually kind of neat about the Daily Wire, and that's its tendency to try out weird and different things. What other media company lets its hosts sell board games they make, advertise novelty cigar brands, start a random sports channel, sell weirdo plushies or candles that smell like a monastery? But the reason most companies don't do this is because it's obviously a huge waste of money, because it's hard to find an audience that wants to buy and watch all of this. When researching the Daily Wire, one of the few sources of actual numbers for their inner workings usually comes from Axios, specifically from articles by Sarah Fisher. Unlike a lot of other sources that speculate based on announcements from press releases, Fisher seems to have an in with Jeremy Boring. In fact, Jeremy Boring stepping down from the Daily Wire was an exclusive.
Yeah, which means that I would question the authenticity or the legitimacy of the information being presented
for her. This isn't that unusual. Fisher is a journalist who specializes in media analysis, so naturally she'd be dealing with a lot of these stories. But something interesting in the last few articles where Jeremy Boring was quoted reveals some interesting hints about the inner workings at the Daily Wire. In May of 2024, there was an article highlighting the success the Daily Wire has had with its commerce vertical, making $22 million in 2023. The article goes out of its way to highlight how Jeremy's Razors, a line of shaving products with Boring as their face, has earned the company $19 million of that $22 million total. That number is revenue though, so it doesn't really tell us how profitable any of this is. And for those keeping track at home, that means roughly $3 million was earned in revenue from all those hoodies, t-shirts, and embarrassing fan merch that I mentioned a little earlier.
That's okay. That sounds like a very high number for, a chatter. But I will explain to you, I will tell you something. Okay, one, that is minuscule for an entire media company that's also producing stuff on the side, like producing commerce on the side. It is pathetic. Okay? Especially when you consider what their profit margins might look like. It's impossible for them to be turning profit here. It's virtually impossible. Their overhead is so much more costly. Okay? If that's their revenue numbers, their overhead is probably so much more costly. And the other thing I will mention is this. From what I understand, and I don't know if this is like actually correct or not. I keep hearing this number over and over again because like Liver King is back with this Netflix documentary on him. And apparently he was able to generate $100 million of revenue with all the shit he was selling. Does that mean he made $100 million pure cash? No, of course not. But that's one guy, and even if his profit margins were like 2% or 3%, he's still, I mean, that's $100 million in net revenue, chat. That's just net. That is just the total amount of revenue generated. I suspect that his profit margin was slim, which is a good amount of money for like a much smaller operation. Okay? Or not net, it's gross. Sorry. I can't believe I said net revenue. It's gross. It's gross revenue. Yes, I meant it's gross revenue. Thank you for correcting me. My point is, he was just a TikToker. He wasn't like an entire media operation. Like he had at max like 10 people that he was paying. And then also the additional, the on the commerce side, I'm sure that's like a self-sustaining business to a certain degree. These guys, on the other hand, are definitely not raking in the dough with a much larger operation.
Speaking of those razors, I want to go on a little tangent here. I managed to find out where these razors are coming from. Originally, they were being manufactured in China, but in a recent commercial for Jeremy's razors, there's this little line about how they've moved production.
We moved our manufacturing out of China.
According to TradeMo, a website that tracks international supply chains, Bentkey Ventures, the LLC that owns the Daily Wire, imported $1.84 million in products from a company called Dorco Co. Limited, which is a Korean company that specializes in manufacturing and selling razors. I went on the Dorco website to try and figure out which of their models was being resold by the Daily Wire, and I'm pretty sure that this handle comes from the TRA 4000 or TRD 5000 models. But what's more important than that is the Dorco razor blades are readily available from other retailers, and usually for a lot less. An 8-pack refill of razor...
That's so awesome. Yeah. The markup is because not woke. That's what it is.
Blades from Jeremy's razors costs you $22, while if you were to order those same blades from Amazon, a 16 refill cartridge set will cost you $27. Or if you want a handle on each of those cartridges, you can get a pack of 9 for $21. Or if it's very important for you to support the Daily Wire, I guess you can spend way more money buying those 8-pack refills. The article itself is not that strange, but considering that Boring was the one interviewed for it, it does seem a bit odd that it's highlighting the success that happened to have his face on them, as it's very important for him to be seen as contributing to the financial success of the Daily Wire. This lines up with a lot of Boring's attempt to be the public face of the company, fashioning himself as the God King, starring in expensive commercials for his razors, and he even dropped a single at one point. Jeremy Boring clearly wants people to know who he is and to think that he's doing a great job. On the other hand, if you look at Caleb Robinson, the other Daily Wire CEO, he's almost invisible. He isn't starring in commercials, appearing on public town halls, and he definitely isn't dropping any music on the Daily Wire channel. He seems more content to simply manage the operations of the company without becoming a personality himself. In December of 2024, there was another Axios article about the Daily Wire seeking investment.
Again by Sarah Fisher. Oh.
In their company, with Boring commenting on Fox News possibly wanting to buy the Daily Wire to expand their podcast offerings. It was a bit strange as it came off a brief mention in a Semaphore article that mentioned that the Daily Wire was a possible option for Fox. But by commenting on that rumor, Boring was given the opportunity to mention that he believes the Daily Wire is worth more than $1 billion and that it had raised a round of capital in 2023 based on that estimate. That seems like a pretty big admission, as the Daily Wire had always prided itself as operating.
What's funny about this is also, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. I already did this the other day.
Well, folks, a big question.
Ben Shapiro is probably one of the largest, if not the largest content creator on the Daily Wire roster. He's the most recognizable figure in the Daily Wire. Here it is, talking about something that is a popular issue, Diddy's downfall. 46,000 views. Ben Shapiro's takedown of the left's horrible border plan, 22,000 views. Okay? He very rarely ever breaks 100K. And when he does, he rarely ever breaks 200K. Ben Shapiro destroys Kanye's pro-Hitler song, 139,000 views. Like, I, on the other hand, I don't have Ben Shapiro's audience. I don't have 7 million subscribers. My coverage of Ben's coverage over the song got more views than Ben's coverage over the song. Matt Walsh is the only large, popular content creator that remains on the fucking network. Okay? And only every now and then does he actually pop off, but his overall view counts are still relatively low as well. Now, Ben has 7 million subs. Matt Walsh has 3.2 million subs. Let's take a look at Brett Cooper. Brett Cooper, when she was doing her own show,
You all probably think that
was absolutely popping on Daily Wire. Brett Cooper went on her own, and look at her numbers now. Now, of course, she releases videos less frequently than Matt Walsh does, but look at her numbers. 500,000, almost 500,000, almost 500,000, more than 500,000. This got, from 2 weeks ago, 1 million views, 1.2 million views. It's all drama. It's all girly pop, but it's girly pop with a nefarious right-wing slant associated with it. And she's able to do that on her own, too. Let's look at Candace Owens now. Candace Owens, 4.2 million,
All right, you guys, the
4.2 million subscribers. Candace Owens, shocking, sinister group behind grocery items, 400,000, 400,000, 900,000, 1.6 million, 1.2 million with Ian Carroll from a month ago. These people are raking in. Oh, fuck. You okay? They're raking in the views. Now, what is here, and then last but not least, I'll show you the largest of the right-wing political commentators, Asmongold. Why are these people popping off is a question you might ask yourself. Asmongold from 11 hours ago, 500,000. This guy, 700,000. Someone blew up a fertility clinic, 500,000. I was right. 957,000. I don't know what that was about, but I guess it's about me. Ironic because everybody always says you always talk about Asmongold. And look at this. A new race war just started, 900,000 views. It was about the outfit. Wait, really? Yeah. Expedition from the same hour. Look, anti-woke slop, 500,000 views from 11 hours ago. Video game, defending a video game, 127,000 views from only 8 hours ago. This video has already passed. Fertility clinic bomber was a 25-year-old Redditor, 151,000 views. His gaming content doesn't do as well, especially if it's pro, a specific type of game that he actually enjoys. Doesn't do as well as his, slop adjacent right-wing political commentary. The point is, I mean, here, this is 2 hours long. I can't stop playing Expedition, 192,000 views, chatter. I played more Expedition, 254,000 views. So it's actually crazy. He legit killed his gaming career, alienated a lot of his older audience. I don't think so. I don't think he would have the audience that he has playing video games right now if he didn't do the political commentary. I think he's farming the reactionaries, and then some of them do stick around for when he plays video games. I think you're wrong. Who knows where he would be at right now playing video games? Yeah, he'd probably go from 30K. He probably would have like 30K at most. Yes, right-wing political commentary is very popular. Okay, very popular for a specific subsect of watchers, viewers that don't necessarily want to learn the talking points, viewers that don't necessarily care about learning the talking points, or even developing a better understanding of politics, but instead simply want to react to politics from the framework of from the perspective of a guy who also doesn't know too much. Okay. They just want confirmation bias. They don't want the nerdy shit that Ben Shapiro presents. And I think this tide started shifting with Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is a lifestyle guy with his only introduction to like actual politics as a lifestyle guy, as a guru, basically like a dating coach, was when he was hitting the culture war buttons over and over again. I think in this modern era, people want less of the actual meat, the less of the actual substance, and they want more a guy who is mostly doing cultural critique from a right-wing perspective in a way that is digestible, that has a lot of right-wing opinions baked into it. Because that's what Candace Owens does now, as opposed to what Candace Owens used to do during her Daily Wire tenure. When Candace Owens was at the Daily Wire, I'm willing to bet that her political engagement was far more focused on delivering right-wing talking points. As opposed to now, she basically leans into the culture, the Diddy case, or conspiracy theories, mostly revolving around Jewish people and their tricks. That's usually what she does, because she's anti-Semitic. And for Brett Cooper, it's the same. She doesn't engage in the realm of conspiracy as much, but instead, Brett Cooper will cover, again, girly pop nation with a right-wing slant. This is what I think the audience wants. The audience wants someone to simply say, this is common sense and confirmation bias, and that's pretty much it. XQ saw Asma's success and tried to dip his toes in right-wing politics, and his Twitter community ripped him to shreds over it. Yeah, because XQC for years and years objectively was an open-minded person. That's the reason why his community immediately yelled at him. He was actually apolitical but empathetic, you know? They want to have something that feels casual to them but reaffirms their views. Exactly. This is a model becoming widespread across subcultures, and it's only going to grow, in my honest opinion. It's like a grift drift phenomenon to secure the right's money. It's not even the right's money necessarily, but it's also the right's audience. Because there are a lot of people, especially younger audiences, that I think developed resentment to what they assumed was liberal politics, which was represented mostly by not allowing them to go to school and forcing them to wear a mask. And young kids developed a lot of resentment towards that and what they assume is like liberalism, a manifestation of like leftist politics or socialism. Whatever. Americans don't really make differences between leftist politics and socialism and the Democratic Party. So that's why I think you see this weird convergence of like the annoying Gamergate, sweaty, unwashed losers who didn't actually ever grow up, and also much younger fan bases that despise women, are incels, only learned everything by being online. They developed their understanding of the world in very scary circumstances during COVID, when they were sheltered and didn't have the capacity to develop socially through interpersonal communication. And now this is what they require. For those young people, however, they can change. I'm not so certain about older people. Like the NEETs that are 35 to 40 in Asmongold's community, I think they're firmly going to hold on to right-wing politics to a certain degree. But for the young people, I think they can change. I mean, they got their introduction to political discourse came from like the Aiden Ross and the Andrew Tates, and now maybe the Asmongols of the world. But they will most likely grow up, hopefully. But I look at this stuff all the time to develop a better understanding of what people are responding to. And I think for a lot of people, the tide will change when they finally come to the recognition that Trump is actually not giving them the bounty that they thought they would get from the Trump administration, right? They're just not. They're not going to see that. Just like the older Gen Z developed their political opinions under the Trump administration as a reaction to the Trump administration. They were very woke. Millennials and older Gen Z developed their pre-COVID anti-Trump slant political perspectives against Donald Trump. This is why I say the younger Gen Z are for the first time experiencing what it looks like, truly what it looks like as they come into adolescence, what it looks like to exist under the Trump administration. They will inevitably realize that all of this like anti-trans panic and owning the libs is not actually changing their material conditions, is not actually creating a more positive future for themselves. And once that moment of realization comes, for them, they will have another option. They will seek out alternative forms of political commentary. And that's when they come here. And that's part of the reason why I've been able to maintain an audience, even through the ups and downs, regardless of who's in charge, because I offer an alternative vision for America, an alternative vision for the future that I truly believe in. That's why I maintain this optimism.
Independent of financial backing. There might be a clue as to how much money the Daily Wire was raising in 2023, as in October of that year, a filing with the SEC revealed that they were seeking $120 million. Of that $120 million, they had already raised $50 million, and the filing mentions that there are 2 investors so far, although it doesn't give us any names on who those people might be. I'm not sure if the Daily Wire got that additional $70 million or who they might have gotten it from, but it does reveal that they were certainly looking for a lot of money. If it's raising capital, it suggests that either the company was on the cusp of expanding or perhaps just really needed the money. Even this whole play of coyly saying that they would be open to being purchased by Fox is another admission that they need an infusion of capital, that either they're looking to expand or that money.
Who do you think are the investors? We know who they are. They're the Wilkes brothers, Ferris Wilkes, and the other one, it's the Koch brother that remains. These are the open funders of Daily Wire that gave the Daily Wire millions of dollars in its inception.
Might be tight. In January of 2025, Jeremy Boring hosted this really strange town hall where he declared victory over trans people after Donald Trump signed an executive order banning certain types of gender-affirming care for minors. Listening to Boring, this is apparently what the Daily Wire had been fighting for years now. This seems like a convenient premise so that Boring can air out a number of grievances. He throws out some wild numbers about how put upon the company has been for its anti-trans stance.
The total cost of the additional shadow banning and removing from recommendation engines and inability to retarget the audiences that we weren't able to engage with in the first place, and all the other consequences of our stand on the trans issue are well in excess of $100 million.
These numbers are impossible to confirm because these are projections heavily based in speculation. It reads,
This is what I mean, by the way. Oh, okay, you banned trans people from athletic competitions. Did your life get any better? The answer to that question will never be yes. Go ask this question to your Zoomer friends or your right-wing friends, okay? The ones that fell down the right-wing radicalization rabbit hole. Are we winning? Are you winning? Did your life improve noticeably or dramatically? Do you feel like you have better job prospects? Do you feel like rent is easier to pay now? And the answer is no. Of course it's no. This was a simple distraction, albeit a very harmful one to trans people, which comprise what, 1%, not even 1% of the entire American population. Constantly dunking on marginalized communities is only an effective tool of organizing until you actually win power. And then when you win power and all of your other promises of economic prosperity don't come to fruition, then people are going to go, okay, well, we dunked on trans people. I thought this was it. What happened? What? You can say that about literally anything, lol? What do you mean? The person that gets 5th place because a trans swimmer got 4th place is only now getting 4th place. That's not a victory. And that only happens maybe maximum like 10,000 times in a decade. Okay? Do you think that you can build a coherent political movement off of the individual gripes of 10,000 people? a lot of rules that are important don't make my life any better. This is the signature achievement. This is the signature achievement or the signature accomplishment that is being hailed as a fantastic accomplishment from one of the largest political movements in the country in political media. Don't you think that that would be, a groundbreaking accomplishment? It does not improve people's material standing. That's it. It does not improve your life in any meaningful way because the entire introduction of trans people in sports is simply a mechanism of distraction away from the real issues, like being able to make rent, okay? Having better job prospects, better pay, better wages, better benefits. These are the real things that people struggle with. But the more Republicans make you think about trans people in sports or whatever, the less you think about those other issues.
As an explanation as to why the Daily Wire is not earning as much money in January of 2025 as it did in January of 2024 or January of 2023, trying to emphasize that the only reason...
Dude, I'm going to tell you right now, when you hear something like that and you say based, that doesn't, like, your life is still awful. You know that, right? Like, deporting 20 million migrants is not going to make you a more person, okay? Your crush is still never going to talk to you. You're still a pathetic loser, and your family most likely is embarrassed, and that's why they don't tell you when they're having family gatherings. You assuming that cruelty that others are going to be subjected to is going to somehow elevate your status in society is a lie, okay? Fix your own damn self instead of fantasizing about the state enforcing violent mechanisms against those who are more marginalized than you are. Yep. Dude, I'm going to tell you. Damn, I cooked on this, by the way. I don't even remember this, but time to hit it with a repost.
And this has happened is because Facebook limited their reach or that YouTube has demonetized a channel or some videos. Not mentioning the very obvious problem of letting go popular hosts or investing heavily into entertainment divisions that have had very limited appeal. Boring gets to the point right here.
Taser face.
The courage of our convictions to stand up when others were not standing up, that maybe that audience would have our back. And yes, that did redound to our benefit.
Bandit MD, thank you.
Not to the price of the hundreds of millions of dollars that we've been denied.
This is what this whole town hall was all about. So he could complain that while it's true they make money off of anti-trans media, it's really unfair that they're not making even more money off of that. The ironic thing is, if this topic were less controversial and simply a statement of fact, no one would be paying money to watch a documentary to say something everybody always believes in. The controversy is what made the money to begin with. Pretending like they should be earning more is a misunderstanding of what it means to take a stance on any issue that is contentious. Of course, there's going to be blowback, and if you're not willing to accept that, it doesn't sound like you understand the risks inherent with running a business like that. This whole town hall sounds like a man trying to explain why his company doesn't have any money. And he's trying to emphasize that it isn't because of his bad business decisions. Rather, it's because of all the enemies they've made for taking a moral stand. In this case, the moral stand of spreading anti-trans propaganda. It all just comes across as desperate. And the comments below this video are going after Jeremy Boring in a way that's pretty surprising. And it reveals how little faith even the Daily Wire audience has in this guy. About 2 months later, the Daily Wire laid off several staff members and Jeremy Boring resigned, really emphasizing how bad the company was doing financially. In spite of all of this bad news, Ben Shapiro is still insisting that the Daily Wire is in great shape.
As somebody who looks at the balance sheet, I can tell you that is certainly not the case. We are healthy, we are growing, we are thriving, and we have extremely big moves that we are looking forward to making this year.
What else is he going to say? That his company is in dire straits
Go.
as executives step down and employees are laid off? Whatever morale there may be at Daily Wire needs to be kept up somehow. I'm not sure it's working though. I looked at the Glassdoor reviews for the Daily Wire in a previous video, and over time, its average score has only gotten worse. For the sake of the employees, I want to read this recent review to emphasize just how poor morale seems to be there. Pros: trauma bonding with your coworkers. Cons: the VP of Member Experience made employees participate in a 9/11 game of Hangman during a mandatory meeting. Leadership and HR is completely corrupt. Bad leaders stay in power through blackmail on executives' talent, constantly outsourcing to the Philippines for cheaper labor. This company does not uphold any values that are spoken about on their shows. The only god here is money and power. Advice to management: turnover is high and continues to be high because of the leadership. At what point will you start looking at leadership for the turnover rate? This review came after Jeremy Boring's resignation, by the way. To anyone currently watching this video right now, I hope it doesn't come as a surprise to you that you're doing an unusual thing. My channel, for all its success, is about niche topics that appeal to a limited audience. Although I do fairly well, there are creators who do much better, and even among them, their audience reflects a small fraction compared to the mainstream. To expand beyond that audience would require someone to completely change the sort of videos they make. What the Daily Wire failed to realize is that they have the exact same problem. Their audience is definitely much bigger than mine. That is certainly the truth. Enough to give them money to mess around with and try to make those movies themselves, but ultimately they are still serving a niche. Conservatives who are so politically engaged that they regularly watch Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh. There are enough people like that to keep a more modest conservative media company afloat, but certainly not enough to create a company that was hoping to one day rival Disney or some other major production company. They were grossly overestimating the power of their reach and how compelling their ideas are. And now it looks like they are in some trouble. That said, I don't really think the Daily Wire is destined for ruin. It's certainly at a low point, even if Ben Shapiro tries to say otherwise. But one major asset conservative media companies have is a nearly endless number of backers willing to open their wallets to keep things going. The only drawback might be that, since the Daily Wire is such a big operation, some investors might scoff at the high price tag to keep it running. That could be another reason why they got rid of so much staff. By ending its failed kids' entertainment experiment, they might be hoping to find new investors to give them a new influx of cash. I have no doubt they'll probably have some announcements later in the year that are meant to make their company look like it's actually doing fantastic. But until they actually release numbers to tell people otherwise, we could only really guess that they're spending money that they don't have or making investments that will never come to fruition. Regardless, I'll try to keep a close eye on the company just in case they do have a reversal of fortunes and suddenly are doing much better than they appear to be at this moment. I'll probably have that update when the company finally drops the Pendragon cycle, because I still think that thing might actually come out at some point. I don't think a company spending millions upon millions of dollars on its production are going to let it just sit on a shelf.
I think it's... Is that Florence Pugh, by the way?
If anyone...
Am I crazy? No, right? Okay. Am I wrong for thinking that... Am I wrong? She kind of looks like her. No, that's Florence Pugh. Okay, calm down.
If anyone from the Daily Wire is watching this and wants some advice about how they can turn their fortunes around so the company won't go broke, I would suggest you guys consider going woke. One thing I didn't really mention in this video because it's kind of hard to measure is that a portion of the Daily Wire's audience seems very unhappy with the commentary coming from some of its hosts, specifically Ben Shapiro and his unwavering support of Israel. While it would be nice to say these people simply hate genocide and are pushing back against Ben Shapiro as he gleefully cheers it on, a lot of it seems to be coming from a general anti-Israel sentiment that's based in anti-Semitism rather than any concern for the Palestinian people. As much as that might hurt the Daily Wire, I think its massive investments not offering anywhere near the returns they need them to are probably much more damaging to their bottom line. This video also has a little more speculation than I'm typically comfortable with, but as someone who has been watching this company for years now, as it's simply lit money on fire to create things no one wants, I would point to my earlier videos, specifically the one on Bentkey, where I said that this whole endeavor looks like it's going to lose them a ton of money and is destined for failure. I'm curious to how this is going to turn out, though, because while I think it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, it's always possible that things could turn around if something dramatic happens. If you'd like to see something dramatic happen on this channel, such as more great videos like this,